All right. Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the DevOps Insights Forum. Today, we're talking about real-time intelligence and operations for the digital enterprise. And why are we talking about that? Well, modern business relies on a complex array of digital services to deliver delightful customer experiences. To be competitive, these services need to stay on, and unfortunately, complex systems break. When they do, organizations are often struggling to react quickly enough. So today, we're going to discuss reliability in rapidly changing environments, eliminating the barriers and finding alignment through data, and strategies to help reduce toil and scale your reliability process. As always, we're joined by our friends from TechStrong Research. Mitch. Hi, Mitch.
Hi, Sam. Good to be with you today. Great topic. Excited. Great panel, too.
Great to have you here. We have a really amazing panel of people. I know folks are expecting to see another person from Tailored Brands. Chai is not able to join us today. We're so happy to be able to have Paula Thrasher fill in at the last minute, and we'll do some introductions of those folks in just a minute. Before we get there, though, we put a poll up. We did some survey work prior to having everybody come and learn a little bit about what's going on in real-time intelligence and operations. Mitch, do you want to share a little bit about that with us? And as we go into this, folks, I want to make sure that everybody in the audience understands that this forum is for you. If there's any questions about what we're doing, if there are comments that you have about things that you've seen that have been working or things that you've seen that aren't working, please share them with the rest of the folks. You can see it in the chat. I see a couple folks already are chiming in. Thank you so much. Let us know where you're joining us from. Really, this is for you, so please make the most of it. Be respectful. If you're rude, we're going to just kick you from the program, and share feedback. So if there's something that we can do better, or if there's a topic that you want us to cover, let us know and we'll do that too. Without any further ado, then, Mitch, I'm going to ask you, please, to go through some of the data.
You bet.
And actually, before we get into the data, we're going to do a polling question.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to involve the audience, the same exact questions that we've been asking folks on the DevOps.com website for a month now. We're going to pop up a poll. Cody maybe can pop up a poll to ask our live audience.
Yeah, Cody. There we go. Okay, this was our first poll question. Again, we're looking for your input. I'll share with you the data from the responses we had. So as a DevOps leader, do you have documented digital experience goals or KPIs? You know, we're in the digital era here, all creating digital experiences for our customers, partners, employees, everybody. So please vote. Like to see everybody's responses here, and it does show up once you vote on the poll. We'll start to see some responses, and we'll kind of monitor how we're getting.
You're right. And it's going to be interesting to see how this audience, which a lot of the folks here probably came from a DevOps.com email blast or what have you, how these numbers line up with folks on this panel. Right, from the general DevOps.com audience.
Exactly. And we on these poll questions, we ranged between 400 and over 1,000 responses. So a nice response. I kind of think of them as polling the audience, right? Just like we're doing here, we're polling the DevOps.com audience as they're visiting that site. All right, we've got a good, healthy set of responses.
So how does that compare?
Yeah, let's bring this. We're 73 and 27. So let's jump to our data. Now, this is data that we took over between, I guess, December and January, leading up to today. Go ahead, and if you want to bring up that next poll data you want me to here. There we go.
Click it. There you go.
Okay. A little different, not too far off, you know, in the 70s versus 60s. I think maybe there's about an 8-point swing or so. So 34% saying no and 66% saying yes. So that's why I think it's one of the things we want to explore with the panel is maybe, is that surprising?
Right.
Many people have goals. A lot of times people say, I don't know what my goals are. So it's good to hear.
Yeah.
You know,
I knew this was going to be a good topic when literally about an hour ago, Bruno, he slacked me. He's like, wow. He's looking at the data. He's like, wow, I can't believe this data. So we're going to get to that data in just a second. But there's good conversations, I think, yeah, for sure, to be had on this.
Yep. Let's go to our next question. Cody, if you want to put up our next poll question that we have. should SRE teams be focused more on customer experience or on system reliability? SRE is a relatively new role, evolving role, a lot of different things. Kind of people think about it different ways. We're curious to see where's the focus should it be more, not exclusively, but more focused on one versus the other. So we're getting a pretty strong response here. Quick, we'll leave this poll open for folks and then compare it to our audience. It's a good question, right? What do you want folks to work on? Where's the need?
Where's the alignment? Where does it all stop, right? If you think about, and this is, again, such a great topic for our conversation, how abstract do you need to be when you're thinking about ensuring that customer experience? Where do you stop?
Exactly.
What are you measuring?
Well, let's bring up the data from our poll that we ran on DevOps.com. So in the same range here, 80% system reliability, more heavily focused on that, obviously, 4 out of 5 folks saying that versus 20% on customer experience. I have some thoughts of maybe why this is, some opinions, let's say. That's not
lovely. I look forward to hearing them, exploring that with you. Fantastic.
Yeah. All right, let's hit our third question, third and final. Do you feel your organization is equipping your teams with the knowledge and space necessary to properly function as an SRE? So we have SREs, have them out there doing stuff. Do they have the technology, equipment, guidance, knowledge, etc., to be successful at that? What they do.
Yeah, I mean, us humans, we're evolving all the time to try and handle lots of different things. Complexity of these applications is certainly ballooning. What's happening in order to make sure people are equipped to deal with that? It's not a given.
And it's a moving target, right? Our environments aren't static. They're evolving all the time.
Constantly evolving.
Interesting. So a little more on the yes side here.
Yep, which is good. That's great. Good on you.
Great.
All right.
Okay.
So let's see where
our data.
Yeah, let's see how that.
Very close to our data. If you go to the next slide, there are a couple slides.
Yeah.
There we go. 52. I think we're 55 on the audience poll. So almost, very, very close within a couple of points saying, about half of the audience feels that their SREs have their knowledge, are well equipped to be able to do the job. So there's some opportunity there too.
Interesting. And so audience, chat while you're out there, are these surprising to you? Are these things, is it surprising that only 52% of the companies out there who probably care about the user experience and that system reliability aren't giving the SREs and the teams the tools that they need or the space that they need to be able to make that happen? So there is some friction somewhere. There's misalignment somewhere, and we can help root it out. So let's see if we can figure that out.
Interesting data.
Awesome. Yeah.
Good butter for our conversation.
Truth is in the data. I love it. Awesome. All right. So now let's bring the rest of our panelists on. And we've already started. I'm sure that there's going to be some questions and some comments from them around the data that we've already shown. So I'll ask them to turn on their cameras. There's Eric joining. Awesome. Oh, wait a minute. I just went to the wrong button. There we go. All right. And Jim Robinson is saying, I think SRE is a subset of customer experience. Interesting. Put it in the main chat, Jim, so that everybody can see what you're thinking. Love that. Love the participation. And I want to encourage that. So thank you. Right now, I want to introduce the other panelists who the folks on chat will be able to talk with. Bruno, can I ask you to start?
Sure. I'll be quick. My name is Bruno. I'm one of the founders and head of strategy here at the company called Sumo Logic. Sumo Logic is a cloud-native platform for observability and security, primarily helping our customers manage reliability and security of their customer-facing applications and workloads. So that's who I am.
Awesome. Very good. Paula, can I ask you to introduce yourself and thank you again for being here last minute?
Sure. So Paula Thrasher, I'm the Senior Director for Infrastructure and Security at PagerDuty. So I own our site reliability organization and build the platform that we build our product on. And our product, if you're not familiar with it, is used for real-time, time-critical service operations and response, really the ops cloud. And I'll let Damon do a little more on that since it's his fault.
So you know a thing or two about helping people with their reliability, and you actually have to manage the machine that's helping all these, I don't know, however many hundreds or thousands of customers manage their reliability. So that's really interesting. It's a great meta conversation that we can have. Next, Eric, can you introduce yourself, please? This way I don't have to say the name of the company wrong again.
Sure. Eric Rogame. I'm the Director of Platform Engineering at Gannett. We run a kind of an internal platform as a service for our newspaper digital presence. So for folks who aren't familiar with the Gannett brand, USA Today is our national brand. And we also have hundreds of local newspapers that use a common content management system that also runs on our platform.
Awesome. Welcome. Thank you for being here. Love that. And Damon, welcome back.
Yeah. Thank you for having me back, Sam. So I'm Damon Edwards. I am at PagerDuty. I run the automation products. So while Paula is an actual doer, right? Paula is running the infrastructure that thousands of companies rely on when things go wrong, right? So as we said, Sam, it's sort of a meta level of availability and reliability. I'm on the product team. So I was one of the co-founders of Rundeck, which was acquired last year by PagerDuty. So it kind of brings us into the automation. So not only can we mobilize people, we actually do something about it. And so I spend most of my time talking to customers, talking to people in the community. So look at me more as I'm more playing an analyst role here, right? Trying to show what I see in the community, while Paula is actually in the engine room making all this work.
Right. That's great. And I mean, as far as the audience is concerned, the power on this panel, I think Paula was one of the folks who helped to coin the term DevSecOps. I think Damon was one of the folks who came up with CAMs, right? I mean, this was 12 years ago. I'm dating him a little bit, but
We go way back.
a lot of knowledge in the space, which is fantastic. We're happy to have all of you joining us on the panel. Thank you so much. So let's dive in to some of these questions, which is really what the audience cares about, Paula. And Paula, unfortunately, your picture looks like Eric, but I promise you, they're actually two people. There's no trickery going on. So the first question here, and I think this is really going to be relevant to the folks who are in the engine room. How does operational reliability matter, and what does it mean to your business, right? Even for, Mitch, you talk as an analyst, you talk with customers, what does that mean to your customers? But who wants to start? Anyone? I don't want to call anybody out. I will. I'm happy to do it. But if anyone wants to volunteer, who wants to start? What's operational reliability mean? All right, I'm going to pick on Paula. Welcome, Paula.
Yeah, so I think word we use is trust, and I think all of us, if you run a business, it takes multiple interactions to build trust with your customer, and it only takes one to lose it. And from an operational reliability, I say you kind of referenced it. PagerDuty is an interesting position. I sort of look at us as we're kind of like 911. Like, we're the thing that everyone calls in the emergency, right? We're the one that wakes everyone up when something goes wrong. So it's a little bit like keeping the 911 system go. It's not a system you want to go down, right? So we have the highest standards of what it means to be available, be reliable for those moments when people are responding to big outages. That's. I think that's, to me, it's can people trust that you're there when they need it?
Right. Yeah. Okay. So that's from a business outcome perspective, that's a pretty big thing. Folks in the audience, what does operational reliability mean to your business? Does it matter to your business if you're operationally reliable or not? I mean, you have a customer focused or a business internal focused application that you're supporting. Tell us a little bit about that. We'd love to hear it in the chat. Awesome, Paula. Thank you so much. Anyone want to volunteer next, or I'll just keep picking on people?
Yeah, I just commented in chat there, Sam, that I always like to equate it to something we already know when we're talking about creating new experiences in the digital world. we live in a world of immediacy, right? We expect everything to work when we get on our mobile app or we walk into the store when there aren't supply chain issues. So we expect the same in our digital world too. I think that reliability is extremely important. And it can mean anything from not just uptime up and down, but performance. And what kind of response time are we getting? Etc. Can we find what we're looking for?
Right. We're speaking of reliability. We're starting to get some echoes off of your microphone. I don't know. There was something going on there. I don't know if you switched something to keep in mind. All right. Okay. Thank you. All right. Let's see. Eric, you had your hand up. I'm going to ask you to share your thoughts. What does it mean?
Yeah. I mean, I think it has a little bit to do with, resiliency around the unexpected. Right. Like in the news industry, right. You don't necessarily have the Super Bowl to plan for or something like that, or Black Friday. A cathedral in Paris might catch on fire and it's a huge news story, and it's evolving, and you're constantly busting cash so that you can keep things up to date. So we have those sorts of events, so the ability to scale rapidly and have resiliency there. So supplying kind of that behind the curtain capability for the newsroom to be able to do what they need to do.
Because it's kind of peaky, it's peaky and unpredictable, is what you're saying, right?
Yeah, and so being able to scale and has resiliency and redundancy for those sorts of things.
Yeah, and back to something that Paula had just sort of said is depending on because we're all depending on somebody, right? If there's infrastructure that goes down, let's say a region goes down in that region and your customers are in that region, and that region goes down, and then you're also in that region, and so part of your service goes down. How do you who's watching the watchers, right? So making sure that resiliency that you talk about, Eric, is so important to make sure that you've architected to be able to work around those to the extent that you can. It's helpful all the way down the stack to your customers downstream.
Yeah, I'll share something that I heard from, we meet with some of our customers. I talked to a CIO of a retail company, and I'd be curious, this sort of resonates with a lot of people, that unplanned nature of surge, like the Black Friday as a moment is almost like that is a thing. I had a customer tell me that, with COVID surges and things, and just the changing dynamics of how people experience their digital services, they'll have a random Tuesday where they'll experience 3 times Black Friday traffic. And it's not happening in as predictable ways. Yeah. It's not like just, on that one day I have to be ready. It could really be any day. And that's, I think, a difference of what's changed. Some just in the more things have gone digital, but just we are so much more digital now than we were. It's more than just the email service. We're so far past that.
Right.
What's changed is for a lot of organizations, it's not planned for a planned peak. It's planned for an unplanned moment.
Yeah. I was just thinking about the analogy of we used to plan all of our big marketing and business moments in an agile, in a waterfall way. Something's going to happen at Christmas, and that will be when we get peak traffic. But that doesn't exist anymore. There's agility even in how the marketplace is trying to get stuff, which we have to be able to respond to. I love that.
Can I add on to what Paula was just saying there? I mean, if you kind of take this down, go down the road, you see where people are the leading edge or the tip of the spear here, where people are thinking, these think of reliability as a static thing, right? Like, we're going to go to try to achieve these 9s, right? Or, Black Friday's coming, so we're going to code freeze and we're going to scale up, right? So you think about sort of as reliability as this kind of static goal to meet, right? And you want to protect that thing, right? And as Paula was talking about, I think we're seeing in these large scale systems is that they're truly become complex systems, right? You can't you can, in a hallmark of a complex system versus a complicated system is like the motor of your car, right? I can take all those gears out and I can model it all. I know exactly if I change the size of the gear or whatever I do, I know what's going to happen to their whole system. Versus like city traffic, right? I can move some cones around and make traffic way worse or way better and not even know, why or how, right? It's truly, we cannot predict the system by looking at the parts, and we're never really in control of it, right? And so I think what we're seeing is where the people's next thinking is saying, look, reliability is not the thing to focus on. The thing to focus on is recoverability and operability, right? Because when that random Tuesday that's worse than Black Friday happens, did we do something that changed the traffic patterns, or is there something going on external to us, or is a partner using us in new ways? Like, we don't know, right? So being able to operate observability, operability, and the recoverability. And it kind of reminds me of the research that came out of the Dora, project company, whatever you want to call it, the original DevOps, studies, and all the researchers did actual hard looking at things, and they realized that companies that focus on quality don't get quality or speed, right? But the companies that focus on speed get speed and quality, right? It's a kind of a weird thing, and go look it up. It's very interesting to see sort of why that is. But you think about it in terms of this, it's like people that look at focus on operability and recoverability get reliability, right? Because they learn how to make the system work. They learn how to respond to the system. If you learn how to respond to the system, then you can automate those responses, right? Or you can spot these things before they develop, right? So it's kind of interesting. I'm seeing that that people are shifting their focus away from the kind of hardened reliability concept and more saying where we're really going to invest in is recoverability and operability, which needs observability, right? They're going to focus there, right? So it's an interesting shift that I see starting to happen from this realization of what Paula said, that we live in this truly complex world that we can't predict.
Right.
Damon, resilience, I think, is a word that describes a lot of what you're talking about. It's really been elevated in our lexicon. We talk about how we design for resiliency. To Paula's point, plan for the unplanned, right? And be able to handle the unplanned when that happens. So we live in a world where resources to be able to handle that should be available to us more easily. It's not fixed in a data center, but can we use it when we need it? Can we respond and recover gracefully when we have issues?
Yeah, that was Eric's original point, right? Exactly. How do you make sure that those news items that are blowing up your front page aren't causing problems, right? That's an opportunity. It shouldn't be a challenge. It should be an opportunity, right?
Yeah, I mean, and the other sometimes things do happen, and a region goes down for whatever reason, but having that resiliency, or having kind of a graceful degradation plan in place, where maybe we have to take down the paywall so that folks can still get to this breaking news
for the time being. Right. Interesting. Right. I mean, that's a real-time business decision. There are factors in there. There are system factors, but it's a business decision that's being made at that point. That's interesting.
Yeah, Sam, Jim put something interesting in the chat here, talking about, says we consider reliability / resilience as uptime or percent availability, but they define level of a system's resilience by how fast we can recover. They can design toward the latter. It's almost like the idea of like input and output metrics. Right? Like output metrics are like things that happen to you, like do customers buy your product, right? Input metrics are what are things that we can do within our four walls that help drive, some output metric at a later date. Right. It's almost like saying, hey, we can, like Jim's point here, like we can plan and design we can work on recoverability, right? Versus the reliability resilience, we can hope that we're working on it, but we might be working on totally the wrong thing. And then we get some weird interaction with something else that we never considered, and the whole thing blows up, right? So it's like it's almost like resilience is or I said recoverability is input metrics, something we can actually do about it.
That's right.
Versus reliability is a output metric.
Right.
What happens to us? Right.
I think Bruno might have some thoughts on this too, so I'm going to give him a chance. Bruno, what are your thoughts?
These are really great points. A lot of thoughts are swirling in my head. Reliability, I think, recoverability, I think you can hire, set up the hierarchy of these terms, multiple different ways, right? If you're not recoverable, you're really not reliable, right? Because if you do believe that everything breaks, everything fails, then making it reliable means that it is recoverable and resilient and all of that. But I do agree with the fact that we need to be able to deal with unknown unknowns. That's that terminology that we use a lot, right? You can plan for things, and then there are things you cannot plan for. And if you don't know how to recover from those, or don't have a system that can, then you're in trouble, right? And, to us, what reliability means is it really means everything to our business. Literally, we have 5 core values in our culture, and the first one is we're in it with our customers. And just like Paula and the PagerDuty team feels, right, you are kind of the 911 service. We're that service that determines that something's broken before 911 is used to communicate. So we're like in this weird ecosystem of technologies that collaborates together to help our customers, joint customers, run reliable, resilient systems. And to us, since we are multi-tenant SaaS service, for us, it's really critical to be able to keep our systems running and restore our systems when something's wrong, because we could impact every single customer of ours in one fell swoop, right? And so, we body a service in our prioritization as priority 0, right? 30-40% of Sumos all work on that. When we have any kind of issue, whether it be security or operational or availability or performance or whatever, everything else stops, right? And so we take it really, really seriously, and to a large degree, because when we go down, our customers are running blind, right? So it's a real business imperative for us and a cultural pillar that we all rely on.
And I'm gonna almost take us in the direction of that question around do I feel like my site reliability engineers are equipped or trained, or I'm not sure quite how it was worded, but I think a big piece of being a site reliability organization is being in almost that consultative role for your organization of helping people understand what good reliability looks like. And that's kind of interesting. I think there's a lot of myths of reliability. And one of them was already mentioned, if you go slow, you'll be more reliable. Okay, that's not the case. The other one is that reliability means never failing. And that's not actually true. Reliability means failure is uneventful. And it's that you expect failure. You have to design for systems to fail, but for a customer experience to not care. And that's actually I think that is, there's not unfortunately there's not site reliability school that I know of. Maybe there is, and you should all send me to it, but there's not the place you go learn this. And that's one of the challenges, is how do we create this organizational knowledge about what it means to build reliable experience. And it's kind of a little bit that we're taking people who build this expertise in architecture patterns, design patterns, toolkits, and trying to sort of send them out into the world that we support internally, and say, this is how product engineering teams can build a reliable service. And I think when you're on that platform side, that's kind of one of your missions as a site reliability organization, is to share that sort of insight that reliability isn't what you think it is. It's actually expecting failure and having good recovery paths, having, reducing the impact of failures, having good, resilience and other patterns that get you there.
I love this. Yeah, I love this. Bruno, did you have something else you wanted to share? Or
I quoted it out there. I'm going to quote it.
I know, me too. I love that. I love that. So, and failure is not an option as a myth. I like that too. All right. So as we're working towards this resiliency, I think that's key, and recoverability. What does that do to the choices that you're making in your operational stack? What is the choices that you've made to your operational stack? How does that affect your recoverability and your reliability? So let's talk a little bit about that. Who should I ask to start first? Bruno, I ended with you last time. I'm going to start with you this time.
All right. So I'm gonna take this from how has our stack evolved? And then we can maybe touch on the operational stack, because really for us, the operational reliability really depended on technology stack, and our technology stack has evolved quite quickly and quite dramatically over the years. We happen to exist in this world where we have to handle our customers' digital exhaust, their machine data, and that data grows at the rate of Moore's law, which is exponential, right? Nobody's revenues are growing at the rate of Moore's law. Nobody's budgets are growing at the rate of Moore's law. We had to figure out how to cope with the rate of Moore's law growth for the data that we capture. And we have had historically a tremendous amount of effort applied to the fact that we started with a bunch of technologies that needed to be gutted and rewritten, and many open source projects that we gutted and rewritten, and have been evolving ever since. We didn't have the option to turn our system off and start it up again. Once it started running in April of 2011, it never stopped running. So we had to do all of these changes on the fly while the system was running. And so for us, we're analyzing 1.5 exabytes of data every day. That's about 2 quadrillion events a day. So coping with that has forced us to redo everything. And coping with that, we had to evolve our operational stack as well. Not in a traditional fashion, because we happen to build big parts of our own operational stack. We dog food our own technology. So what happened to us is our requirements drove the development of our product, and that product is then being used by our own DevOps and SRE team and security teams. And so we had this virtuous cycle. So we're a little bit outside of the normal evolution of our operational stack, but certainly, lots of that growth in data has impacted our own technology and architecture for scaling and security and so on.
Right on. All right. So let's take it over to Damon. What are your thoughts on operational tech stack? What have you seen when the?
Well, I'm just thinking about if you guys had a penny for every time somebody sent you an event, you'd be trillionaires. So I'm still stuck on that. I'm still stuck on that fact. Anyways, we're in the event business too. So I know the numbers get mind-boggling quickly, but that's Paula's domain. The thing I'll kind of add to this is just that a simple thought that the idea of an operational tech stack never really existed before this decade, right? What'd you have? Like you had, Jim with the Birkenstocks and the beard that didn't want to talk, that would yell at you if you came by his desk to ask him something, right? I mean, that classic sysadmin, go away or I'll replace you with a small shell script, t-shirt we used to see, like, those people, right? Jim and Jane and everybody else that you could imagine in those roles. That was our operational tech stack, right? And they wrote Bash scripts and some Perl scripts and other stuff like that. And that was it, right? And maybe we had some monitoring tools that people set up, and they set it up once and they never really configured them again. Now it's the idea that you actually need an operational tech stack, right? And I think part of that is the complexity we were talking about. Part of that's the velocity, the scale of the number of people that you have to coordinate is one thing that I think. So I think that the velocity is something the velocity is the DevOps movement. People think, wow, stuff's moving fast. I need a tech stack. And the complexity that we're now realizing when you put that together with these big cloud native microservices things. But also, I think we're coming to a point where it's the people complexity, right? It's just the scale of human beings that are now collaborating to build these complex systems. And you need tooling around that, right? How those people communicate and, harness each other's knowledge and whatnot. So I think this is something that's pretty exciting for us, but it's pretty interesting for the rest of the world is, in the last 5 years, people are realizing they need a tech stack for their, for operations. So, it's early, it's still early days, right? And I think, that's a really exciting and interesting development.
It's interesting, Damon, you mentioned complexity, put too many abilities in there. Complexity, but at the same time, we need visibility inside of what's happening inside of applications with microservices, containers, et cetera, more porous kinds of software architectures. We have more environments that we're in all at the same time. And you can sort of add to that list as long as you want. And in one way, all of those things are changing in their own path. SaaS services that were relied upon, APIs to those services, releases that are coming outside of our change control, even knowledge sometimes of what's changing. So I think we've gone from the goal is a quiet operations center where if nothing's happening, it's good. It's more like kind of making sure that the launch is going well, but we're in a constant launch state of kind of getting this thing off the ground, this rocket off the ground, where it's constantly evolving. And so the tech stack for that is very different than something that's static. And I just want to know if there's issues and what that issue is.
Yeah, I love the idea of, continuous, it's always continuous improvement. It's never done. And so the ecosystem that you're trying to look at is constantly evolving because new technology, new code, new whatever. So you're going to have to respond to that. You'll need different ways of looking at it, different ways of managing it, different ways of responding to it. So I love that.
It's almost, Sam, it's almost a different way of working too, right? Which is interesting. It's like if you went to you hear like old pilots that will complain like, oh, we have all these new automated fangled systems that do all these things, but because we're piloting more complex systems into complex air traffic patterns and whatever, things that didn't exist when you're flying a Cessna in 1950, right?
Yeah,
so
more flexibility now is.
Yeah, you have to, which is interesting because that's an interesting shift. It's not just the shift in development of these tools appearing, but it's a shift in that it's almost a generational shift that you have to get used to working through these tools, because if you don't have those abstraction layers, the complexity and the speed and the human scale just doesn't work, right? So especially run this thing out, on the expected timeline. Right.
That's right.
For us, we've tried to kind of get back to that Cessna, at least for our internal developer customers, right? So, our path and evolution has been to Kubernetes, right? And we first started with stateless apps in Kubernetes, and then stateful apps, and now we're putting clustered apps into Kubernetes. But it's not just like what kind of apps are living in there, but also with Kubernetes, there's an ability to kind of add your own tools to the Swiss Army knife, right? Like external DNS and cert manager and like all these things that just our internal customers get for free just by deploying their Cessna to Kubernetes and okay, they've got monitoring, logging, DNS certificates created on the fly, all of that, and trying to.
So I put this way. One question I'd ask you is, Eric, are they really flying a Cessna, or do they think they're flying a Cessna, but behind the scenes it's a, fly-by-wire, 787 fully automated, mega plane, right? But to them, it's like, oh, I'm giving you simple controls. I'm exposing simple controls to you and simple primitives, but behind the scenes, is the magic's happening.
Yeah, for sure. It's the the software middleware for the 737-800, right, to make it seem like a smaller plane. But,
could be good, could be bad, right?
Yeah.
This thing handles just like a Cessna. Yeah. Nice. So Mitch, Paulo or Mitch, one of you two, you haven't shared anything.
I want to hear from Paul. I jumped in earlier.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think to some extent, what I keep in mind is customer expectations evolve too. So, once upon a time, people tolerated waiting. Remember how long it used to take, if you're old enough around, to for a computer just to boot up, right? We would not tolerate sitting around for 2 minutes waiting for a screen to load anymore. And so it's not solely that, we somehow we were in a bad place and we have to get to a good place with operationalizing and maybe that's the case in some places, but It's also that we have to kind of keep raising the bar because that customer experience benchmark keeps going up, right? In terms of what it means to have a delightful customer experience, what that expectation is. So in spite of the fact that we have to operate a more complicated system sometimes in the back end, we have to make sure what it delivers on the customer experience side is like, even better again and again and again. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges is you can't just like, okay, I built a resilient system and then I'm going to go home and like take the rest of the year off. It's that you have to constantly have this continuous improvement model of raising that bar because the customer doesn't stay static either.
That's right.
If I could have a question for Eric. I'm really curious, you talked about kind of going back to the old days, the Cessna days with your developers. We put a lot of demands on developers now. They're supposed to do security now too. They're supposed to do everything, right? They can't do everything. It's not possible. What kind of things did you do, or maybe what led you to say, let's simplify their world or make it easier in these ways? Really curious what your experiences were there.
Well, right. So developers, so I'm being further down the stack, right? I can keep trying to hit them over the head and say, hey, you go fix this or go do that this way. But right, they have product managers that they have to deliver features for, and that's really what they're getting paid for. So if we can, or for example, we do security scanning through side scanning their volumes now. Right, there's agentless type stuff.
Just trying to make it the easy path. Everything's the easy path.
Yeah, like it just getting kind of all those things that they don't have to think about or worry about. And trying to use open standards where possible so that libraries will be available and there isn't like lock-in for like one particular thing or whatever is really important as well. But yeah, it's really like those things are needed. And if I can deliver it once across the platform, right, across all our clusters that we stamp out, and everybody can benefit from it, that's a huge win.
That helps to scale it up. Yeah, I love that. Awesome. Okay. Any other thoughts on this? Otherwise, I think we've already sort of crossed into what the next topic is, and I think the human part of this is so important. But that happens to do with the processes as well from a reliability, resiliency perspective. So let's talk a little bit about that. This time, I think I'll start with Eric. Eric, how have your operations processes evolved?
I mean, it's continuing to evolve, right?
Right.
I think one of the interesting things that has been brought up in this discussion earlier is the people factor. And you have an outage, you have some kind of impact where a particular failure domain fails, and understanding like who does this impact, right? Like what's the blast? How big is the blast radius? And or this one thing that's upstream is hosing up these other things. Who owns that? And so in an incident and trying to figure out the who, and maybe not just who owns it, but who from the business needs to be informed. Or this other thing needs to get kicked over. Who do we need to, like, whose approval do we need to do that? I think that is kind of one of the next evolutions kind of in the operations and observability is the human factor. Right. There's like applications, right, and systems that run on infrastructure, and there are people associated both with that infrastructure and with the application tier. And then there's also business owners who you have to keep involved. I think from an operations standpoint, right, we're starting to see a lot more kind of the automatic, like anomaly detection type things.
Mhm.
It's things that you didn't plan for or know about, right? You can't just alert on whatever your last outage was.
Right. Right.
You have to start thinking about what's different, what changed,
Mhm.
and that helps you get to the mean time to recovery and root cause much faster.
Yeah, I think the visibility factor, observability is a buzzword, but I'm gonna take it a little up the level. You know, I think it's both a function of complexity and also, to say there was a positive of being like in person in an operations center, and some people still have, operating centers, SOC, NOC, EMOC. We've got lots of names for what we call our operating centers. But what do they all have, right? If you like, even what Hollywood thinks they have, a lot of monitors, right? And why? They have a lot of monitors because it's creating a visibility, situational awareness of what's going on in your complexity there, and it's trying to synthesize what's going on into something that you can just like, okay, this is red light, green light almost, right? And sometimes it was running into the server room to look for the red, right? Which doesn't happen in the cloud. I can't run into the Amazon doesn't let me run in the back of their data centers and look for the red light, so I got to have a virtual version of that. And that is that visual sense of being able to orient to situational awareness, what is happening, and having that exceed. Because I think one of the things that I see happen is just really like it's an ever battle you're having in the world of operations in a complex system. Every individual developer or operator, they run this thing, right, or they run this collection of things, and they get called into an incident response and something's broken. They know their thing. They don't always know the whole system. But how do you give the people who are responding in that incident the whole system? How do you create situational awareness, the equivalent of the row of monitors, and how does that monitor have the right thing on it that really helps you go, that's the blinking red light. That's what we need to go focus on. And that could be, hey, look, this is the thing that changed. It could be, oh, look, the cathedral's on fire. This is the event that's driving this. This is the, and where is that hitting our systems that's causing problems? So to me, creating situational awareness, whether you want to call that observability or not, how you get there is, I think there's a couple paths to get there. But to me, that is the most important piece in terms of sort of this constant battle of keeping your situational awareness up to speed with the changes that you're making, as you build your features and your product and your platform, right? Like they have to kind of be first-class citizens in that
Adaptive.
process.
You need to adapt to the changes that are happening in your environment for sure.
Yeah, and I think it's right. Things at this point, like if your organization is running well, things are changing at a speed where that can't just be a document that sits somewhere. It needs to be something that's automatically created, right, through the relationships that the applications have, either through like distributed tracing as well as like, oh, this thing's running on this piece of hardware in this region, and starting to create those failure domains and understand like, oh, well, this thing failed, so all these things are impacted.
Excellent. All right. I haven't heard from Bruno yet. Bruno, how have our operations processes evolved, or our customers? How do you see our customers' operational processes evolving?
So I'll talk about ours first. Our customers is probably a whole other where we can talk about the changes in the market and all of that. But our own have evolved probably the way that you would guess. We started with, everybody runs their own thing. Can't see the forest for the trees, right? We're running, this is my microservice. We used to have sort of an attempt at having a sort of on-call personnel that was supposed to know and be able to troubleshoot the whole system when the system was smaller. We've then kind of evolved, and that used to be basically, 24/7. You had a pager for 24 hours, and you were woken up at any point of the day or night. And then we've evolved. We created a bunch of burnout, and then we evolved and created a system that's a little bit more human friendly, right? We're now in a 12 by 7 follow the sun model. So it helps people not burn out so hard and be woken up at 3 a.m. and try to get on top of a complex system and try to figure out who else to call. We've evolved to a layered system as well. We now have what we call an IRC, incident response coordinators, whose task really is to figure out whom to call quickly, and then each team has their own rotation, right? So who's on call for specific components and all of that in a complex distributed system, right? And so as we've sort of done that, we've also gone similarly to what Eric was talking about earlier, is to kind of, we used to rely on what we knew to look for, right? Lots of rules and configured alerts and thresholds and things like that, and, on a component level, which were reasonable approximations to that the system might be in trouble. We are now kind of moving away from that, zooming out into kind of business level metrics that matter, right? That give us a kind of what's the weather like out there, that give us a cascading level of views into what's happening. And that relies a lot more on things that are much more kind of outlier/anomaly/change detection versus, this threshold has been breached or what have you, right?
Right.
And so both the process of how we do things, but also the things that we measure and how we measure them has evolved. And, that's never going to stop, like Eric said, right? We're going to continue evolving and get better at these things, and get more data, more insights, and we run postmortems religiously. We believe in the process, right? There's a lot about making sure that, you are consistent and that people come back to it. You build muscle memory, and we run postmortems, and we're very transparent with our customers when something goes wrong. Our customers know what went wrong and how we fixed it, all that, right? And so that keeps us honest. And, that's kind of where we are today and where we used to be.
Nice. So Mitch and Damon, do either of you have any thoughts on this?
I'll just jump in real quick. I want to acknowledge Jarvis brought up open telemetry. That hasn't come up, and I think that's one of the unique things about the observability part of our industry is the central role that open source and the participation from the vendor community, collaboration really around telemetry data, and focusing on value add above the agent. The other thing I think that's evolved for us is we're now asking ops, if you will, in the world of observability, not just to measure technology, resource utilization, errors. We're asking back to our first poll question around, do you have documented KPIs and goals for your digital experiences? What is that? We're talking about business metrics. Bruno mentioned that in his response too. So if you're truly worried about or concerned about what kind of an experience are we delivering to our employees, partners, customers, et cetera, it goes back to some user experienced measurements. Means we're measuring more than just database errors or transactions per second. So it's a different world for that part of it. Those other things matter too.
Yep.
And we're also, I just put it in the chat, we have another DevOps Insights forum. The next one we're doing literally is on open source. And so, and our next slide, Jarvis, you're a step ahead of us. The next slide is about the data, right? How does data fit in? How do you get the data? How do you process that data? How do you leverage? How do you give it meaning to humans and filter out all that noise from those humans? So we are 7 minutes away from the end of this program, which is it always goes so fast, and I apologize that it goes so fast, but it's just the conversations are so great. Before I forget, Cody has sent me the names of the $25 Amazon gift card winners. So I'm going to share those now so I don't forget. It's Dennis D, Nick P, Yong K, and Danielle D. So look for some communication. Congratulations on that. But the $25 is kind of irrelevant when you think about the knowledge that you've gotten from these folks who've done this, who've been in the trenches, and they're doing it today. So
$25 instead.
Go ahead. What, Damon?
I'll take a gift card. If they don't want it, they feel like it's too much. I'll take 25. I'm joking. I love talking to all of you.
Send it to Damon.
So we have
I love talking to all of you.
that I'm going to let people, if they have any thoughts on it, raise their hand. How and where does data fit in? I think we've talked about that a little bit. and what kinds of things are you looking at tackling next? So I'm going to ask.
Sam,
go ahead, Dave.
Do you have to jump in on that? Yeah, I think this kind of ties to the previous question. Like, we're so early days on this. It maybe feels like we're not, but I mean, imagine like in 2004 or 5 around there when Luke Knies was founding Puppet, right? He used to go around to conferences and rant that if you put a CD into a server, you should be fired, right? And that was actually controversial, right? That's 15 years ago. It was controversial. The idea that if you go and put a CD into it, you know, like that was like the state of the art, right? And here we are today. So you ask, like, how are they changing? It's like everything's changing, right? And we've only gotten developers into the game in the last few years, right? And developers have had 20 years of agile ideas seeping in, right? Now it's been like maybe 5 years or so, or 10 years since developers started thinking about, 5 years ago, or 10, whatever, DevOps, the whole motion in the DevOps movement started because developers and operators, if they both showed up at a conference, one of them was at the wrong place, right? So again, that was 10 years ago, right? So like, you think about where we are today, like we think we're like so advanced, but like it's just the bottom, it's the foothills of the Himalayas of change. And I think the data is the latest thing, right? Like the idea of using observability and data-driven systems administration, right, is another thing that's like, what? Like, yeah, data. Oh, sure. How many times the monitoring thing turn red? Like that, how many times you run the data center do you think a day and you see a red light, as Paula was talking about, right? So like, I feel like how the data fit in, like, I think it does. It fits in somehow. And we're such early days as to kind of where this is all going. That's just my meta comment.
Lovely. Who else? Eric, you've got a meta comment? Help us take
I think about like business metrics and business goals and KPIs, and the need to pull those down into kind of your operations and observability space. And it can't just be, we're waiting on the Google Analytics data to get processed for the next day, and we'll see how we did. If you think about we have subscriptions, and when somebody subscribes, that ends up being an API call, and we have a log event for that, right? So we can turn that into a metric at an operational level, and start to think about how operate, when we do, there's new code went out or something, or all of a sudden, hey, subscriptions dropped to 0 for the past hour or whatever, with something happen. Things like that, like starting to correlate business outcomes in the same tooling and same, dashboards or whatever, same sort of alerts, and have those correlations to the care and feeding of your environment, but think of it as the care and feeding of your business.
And being able to adapt to new data as it comes in, to make sense of data that you never knew was going to end up being in your remit, right? You had no idea that you were going to get that data. So that's important too, is that adaptability, changing conditions. Because guess what? Stuff changes. During the middle of this thing, because of COVID, I needed to leave my work area because other people needed to be in there. I was like, all right, no problem. I adapted. Hopefully it didn't impact anyone. Anyone else have any comments they want to share before I close this up? Because we are almost at the top of the hour. Last parting thoughts, anyone? Reliability is good.
I was just going to add, I think when I started my career many, many years ago, we won't go into that, but operations was sexy because that was where the hardware was, right? That was one of the cool things. You did the tour of the operations center. Today, I think observability has made operations sexy again. And it's what helps us lift our heads up to line of sight to the business goals, as well as being able to look into the details. So it's a great time to be in this part of the industry.
Love it. I don't think I could say anything better than that to close this off. So I want to thank our panelists for joining us. Paula, thank you again for being here at the last minute. Eric and Damon, it's great to have you join us. Thank you, audience, for being here, for participating. We're doing these for you. I won't say we all know all this, because I learn something every time, but everyone on the panel, they know all this. They're just here to share their knowledge. So I love that you're engaging and asking questions and giving us your opinions. We'll see you next month for the DevOps Insights Forum. Again, we're going to be talking about open source and DevOps, so it should be a really good conversation. See everybody then. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.